Welcome back to the channel Movie Creepers. Pain and pleasure, indivisible. From Clive Barker's twisted imagination comes Hellraiser, a saga of forbidden desires, relentless torment, and the horrors lurking beyond the Lament Configuration. Join us as we unravel the blood-soaked history of Pinhead, the Cenobites, and the cursed souls who dared to summon them. From Frank Cotton's gruesome fate to the cosmic horror of Hellraiser, Bloodline, we dive deep into the nightmare. Are you ready to explore the limits of pain and pleasure? Then solve the puzzle and step inside. Before we jump into the exploration, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future videos. Thank you. Let's begin. Hellraiser, 1987. Frank Cotton, a hedonistic thrill-seeker, purchases an antique puzzle box in Morocco, said to summon beings that offer ultimate pleasure. The merchant ominously tells him, "Take it, it's yours, it always was." Back home, Frank solves the puzzle in his attic, unknowingly summoning the Cenobites, sadistic beings from another dimension. Hooks and chains shoot from the box, tearing him apart. Moments later, a tall, pale figure known as Pinhead surveys the carnage, restores the room to its normal state, and takes the puzzle box, erasing any sign of Frank's gruesome demise. Sometime later, Frank's brother, Larry, and his wife, Julia, move into the abandoned house. Julia harbors a dark secret. She had a passionate affair with Frank before marrying Larry and still yearns for him. As they inspect the house, they find it in disarray, with signs that Frank had been squatting there before disappearing. Meanwhile, Larry's daughter, Kirsty, calls to check in, and Larry invites her to visit. While exploring, Julia secretly pockets a photograph of Frank, reminiscing about their forbidden romance. On moving day, as movers struggle to haul a mattress upstairs, Larry accidentally gashes his hand on an exposed nail. Squeamish at the sight of his own blood, he rushes to Julia for help. As his blood drips onto the attic floor, something stirs beneath the wooden planks, absorbing the liquid. That night, in the attic, a grotesque, skinless figure begins to take shape. It is Frank, partially resurrected by the spilled blood. During a housewarming party, Julia sneaks away upstairs, drawn to the attic. There, she is confronted by the hideous, half-formed Frank, who reveals himself to her. He explains that the blood revived him and pleads for her help, demanding more bodies to restore his flesh. Still infatuated, Julia agrees. The next day, she seduces a man at a bar, lures him home, and brutally kills him with a hammer in the attic. Frank feeds on the man's blood, growing stronger. Julia, horrified yet enthralled, continues bringing men to their deaths to sustain Frank's gruesome resurrection. Meanwhile, Kirsty becomes suspicious of Julia's strange behavior. One evening, she spots Julia leading a stranger into the house and follows them. Inside, she stumbles upon Frank mid-feeding, his body nearly complete. Terrified, she seizes the puzzle box and flees. Frank pursues her, calling out, "Come to Daddy." In her panic, Kirsty throws the box out the window and collapses in the street. A passerby finds her and takes her to the hospital. Kirsty awakens in a hospital room with the puzzle box beside her. Curious, she begins to manipulate its pieces, inadvertently solving the puzzle. The walls open, revealing a dark corridor, and a grotesque, skittering creature emerges, chasing her back into the room. Suddenly, the Cenobites appear, led by Pinhead. They inform her that by opening the box, she has summoned them and must now come with them to experience their form of pleasure, an eternity of pain. Desperate, she bargains for her life, revealing that Frank has escaped them. Skeptical but intrigued, Pinhead agrees to take Frank back if she can provide proof of his identity. He warns, "If you cheat us, we'll tear your soul apart." Back at the house, Frank, now fully restored but still without skin, desires a new disguise. He convinces Julia to help him murder Larry, whom he then skins and impersonates. That evening, Kirsty returns, unaware that her father is already dead. She embraces him and warns of Frank's danger, but he feigns ignorance. Julia leads Kirsty to the attic to see for herself. There, she is horrified by the mutilated remains of a body, believing it to be Frank's. The Cenobites appear, declaring, "We want the man who did this." Suddenly, Kirsty realizes the truth. Frank is wearing Larry's skin. Frank, now exposed, decides to kill Kirsty to silence her. As he approaches her with a knife, Julia tries to hold Kirsty back, but Frank, without hesitation, fatally stabs Julia instead. Sneering, he tells her, "Nothing personal, babe." Julia dies as Frank drains her life force. Kirsty flees, leading Frank into the attic. As he advances on her, he arrogantly proclaims, "Your dear old Uncle Frank." The Cenobites hear this confession and trap him. He tries to backtrack, but it's too late. The female Cenobite reminds him, "We had to hear it from your own lips." Hooked chains emerge, ensnaring Frank from all sides. His flesh is torn apart as he whispers, "Jesus wept," before being ripped to pieces. With Frank gone, Kirsty thinks she is free, but the Cenobites turn on her, reminding her that no one escapes them. She frantically grabs the puzzle box and begins reversing its configuration, sending the Cenobites back to their hellish dimension. As Pinhead lunges at her, he warns, "We have such sights to show you," before vanishing. The house collapses, and Kirsty barely escapes. Outside, she reunites with Steve. As the house burns, she tosses the puzzle box into the flames, hoping to destroy it. However, the mysterious vagrant from earlier appears, retrieves the box from the fire, and transforms into a winged skeletal creature before flying away with it. In the final scene, the puzzle box is back in the hands of the same Chinese merchant who sold it to Frank. Another unsuspecting customer approaches, and the merchant asks, "What's your pleasure, sir?" hinting that the cycle of horror will begin anew. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, 1988. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2 follows Kirsty Cotton, Ashley Lawrence, after the horrifying events of the first film. The movie opens with Captain Elliot Spencer, Doug Bradley, unlocking the Lament Configuration, transforming into the Cenobite Pinhead. In the present, Kirsty is placed in the Channard Institute, a psychiatric hospital, where she is questioned by Detective Ronson, Angus Mackinnis. When police recover a bloodied mattress from her home, she warns them to destroy it, fearing it could bring back her wicked stepmother, Julia Claire Higgins. Dr. Philip Channard, Kenneth Cranham, secretly obsessed with the Lament Configuration, steals the mattress. His assistant, Kyle McRae, William Hope, follows him home and discovers his gruesome experiments. Channard uses a mentally ill patient, Mr. Browning, Oliver Smith, as a sacrifice to resurrect Julia, who feeds on victims to regenerate her skin. Kyle informs Kirsty, and they attempt to stop Channard, but he is killed by Julia. Meanwhile, Channard manipulates a young, mute puzzle-solving girl named Tiffany, Imogen Borman, into opening the Lament Configuration. The Cenobites, led by Pinhead, emerge but spare Tiffany, realizing she was coerced. Channard willingly enters Hell and is transformed into a monstrous Cenobite by Leviathan, the ruler of Hell. Kirsty follows Tiffany into the labyrinthine realm, hoping to find her father, but instead encounters her uncle Frank, Sean Chapman, who tricked her into coming. When Frank attempts to reclaim Julia, she betrays and kills him. Julia and Tiffany attempt to escape, but Julia is pulled into a vortex. Kirsty and Tiffany return to the real world, only to face the now powerful Channard Cenobite, who slaughters the original Cenobites, including Pinhead, reducing them to their human forms before killing them. Kirsty convinces Tiffany to solve the puzzle, ultimately destroying Channard. Disguised in Julia's skin, Kirsty rescues Tiffany, and they escape as Hell's portal collapses. Sometime later, movers clearing Channard's belongings discover the bloodied mattress. When one is consumed, a grotesque pillar emerges, featuring Pinhead, Julia, and other tortured souls. The film ends with a mysterious figure asking, "What is your pleasure, sir?" echoing the first film's chilling conclusion.
Shall we begin?
Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, 1992. Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth continues the terrifying saga of Pinhead and the Lament Configuration. After the events of Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, the Cenobite known as Pinhead is trapped within the Pillar of Souls, an intricately carved structure embedded with writhing figures and grotesque faces. The pillar, along with the cursed puzzle box, is acquired by J.P. Monroe, the arrogant and wealthy owner of a nightclub called the Boiler Room. Meanwhile, Joey Summerskill, an ambitious young television reporter, stumbles upon the horrors of the Lament Configuration when she witnesses a teenager being gruesomely torn apart by chains in a hospital emergency room. Her investigation leads her to Terry, a young woman who had stolen the puzzle box from the Boiler Room. As Joey delves deeper, She discovers the terrifying history of the Cenobites and the dark power of the puzzle box through video interviews with Kirsty Cotton, a survivor of previous encounters with Pinhead. Unbeknownst to them, Pinhead remains dormant within the Pillar of Souls until J.P. Monroe unknowingly awakens him. One night, chains suddenly emerge from the pillar, gruesomely killing a clubgoer and absorbing her soul into the pillar. Pinhead, now aware of his predicament, manipulates Monroe into bringing him more victims so he can feed on their blood and regain his full power. However, this incarnation of Pinhead is far more dangerous than before. Unlike in previous films, where the Cenobites functioned as beings of order, Pinhead has been separated from his human soul, Elliot Spencer, a former British Army officer from World War I. Without the restraint of his human self, Pinhead is no longer bound by the rules of hell, driven purely by chaos and destruction. Joey is visited by Spencer's ghost, who reveals the truth about Pinhead's origins and the only way to defeat him, by reuniting the two halves of his existence. Pinhead fully emerges from the Pillar of Souls and unleashes carnage in the boiler room, slaughtering the patrons and transforming several victims into new Cenobites. With his new army at his side, Pinhead sets out to destroy the puzzle box, ensuring he can never be banished back to hell. As Pinhead wreaks havoc, Joey races against time to stop him. She must use the puzzle box to bring Pinhead back to the realm of his human counterpart, Elliot Spencer. In a surreal confrontation, Joey lures Pinhead into a dreamlike battlefield, where Spencer helps her trap Pinhead's essence. With the Lament Configuration, Joey finally sends Pinhead back to hell, ending his reign of terror. With the nightmare seemingly over, Joey buries the puzzle box in wet cement at a construction site, hoping to prevent anyone from ever using it again. However, in a chilling final scene, the site is revealed to be the future location of a skyscraper with eerie, Cenobite-like designs, suggesting that Pinhead's evil may one day return.
Welcome to Oblivion.
Hellraiser, Bloodline, 1997. Paul Merchant, the creator of Space Station Minus, hijacks the station and takes it out of orbit. He forces a robot to solve the Lament Configuration, which summons the Cenobites and tears the robot apart. Security guards, led by Rimmer, arrest him, but he insists he must complete his plan. To explain, he recounts his family's cursed history. In 18th century France, Philippe Lamarchand, a toymaker, crafts the Lament Configuration for Duc de Lisle, a wealthy aristocrat obsessed with dark magic. Lisle and his servant Jacques kill a woman, skin her, and use the box to summon a demon princess, Angelique, who must obey them unless they obstruct Hell's will. However, Jacques betrays and kills Lisle, taking Angelique for himself. Meanwhile, Lamarchand, having designed the Elysium configuration to destroy the demons, tries to reclaim the box but is caught. Jacques mocks him, declaring his bloodline cursed forever, before ordering Angelique to kill him. Lamarchand dies, but his wife survives. 2 centuries later, John Merchant, Lamarchand's descendant, has built a skyscraper containing the Lament Configuration, as seen in Hellraiser 3. Angelique, learning the bloodline endures, turns on Jacques, brutally killing him for impeding Hell's plans. She seduces John and unearths the Lament Configuration in the building's basement, using a man to solve it. The puzzle summons Pinhead, who kills the man. Pinhead schemes to use John's unfinished Elysium configuration to permanently open a portal to Hell. He and Angelique manipulate John, with Pinhead transforming twin security guards into a grotesque 2-headed Cenobite. When John resists, Pinhead threatens his son, Jack. John tries activating the Elysium configuration, but it fails. As punishment, Pinhead kills him, but John's wife, Bobby, fights back, forcing Pinhead, Angelique, and the monstrous Chatterbeast back into Hell. Back in 2127, Paul remains imprisoned aboard Minus, but he has already summoned the Cenobites. Pinhead, Angelique, now a Cenobite herself, the twin Cenobite and Chatterbeast. One by one, the Cenobites massacre the station's guards. Pinhead kills Parker, Angelique kills Carducci, Chatterbeast kills Chamberlain, and twin Cenobite kills Edwards. With the situation dire, Rimmer frees Paul, who reveals Minus was built as a trap for the Cenobites. As Rimmer flees to a shuttle, she kills Chatterbeast by manipulating the station's pressure system. Meanwhile, Paul deceives Pinhead with a hologram, buying time to escape with Rimmer. He then activates the Elysium configuration. A network of lasers and mirrors generates an inescapable field of perpetual light. The space station itself folds around this light, transforming into a massive box. As the trap is set, Minos self-destructs, annihilating the Cenobites and severing Hell's connection to Earth forever. Paul, having fulfilled his family's destiny, watches from the shuttle with Rimmer as the curse of the Lament Configuration ends at last. Hellraiser, Inferno, 2000. Detective Joseph Thorne, a corrupt and self-serving Los Angeles cop, investigates the gruesome murder of Jay Cho, who was found torn apart by hooked chains after solving a mysterious puzzle box known as the Lament Configuration. At the crime scene, Joseph discovers the box under a candle along with the severed finger of a child. Despite being married to his wife, Melanie, Joseph frequently cheats on her, including with a prostitute named Daphne. One night, after solving the Lament Configuration in a motel, he experiences what seems to be a dream, encountering disturbing Cenobites, including the Wire Twins, a second chatterer with no legs, and finally, Pinhead, who rips his face apart before Joseph wakes up. Joseph returns to the police station and receives a distress call from Daphne, who is being attacked. He and his partner, Tony Nenenen, investigate, only to find her dead, gruesomely murdered with hooks. Another child's severed finger is found at the scene, which forensics reveal was cut off while the child was still alive. A fingerprint on the Lament Configuration leads Joseph to a man named Leon, who cryptically claims to be working for a brutal serial killer known as the Engineer. Determined to track down the Engineer, Joseph encounters a child who gives him a tape depicting the murder of his informant, Bernie, at the hands of the masked engineer. However, when others attempt to view the tape, it appears blank. Bernie is later found dead in his ice cream truck, along with yet another severed child's finger. The case leads Joseph to Dr. Paul Gregory, a psychiatrist who seems to know an unsettling amount about the Engineer and the Lament Configuration. Suspicious of him, Joseph considers him a possible suspect. After receiving a phone call from his mother, who unknowingly claims that the Engineer is in the room with them, Joseph rushes to his parents' house. Though he has long neglected them, his father being severely ill, he finds them alive with no sign of the Engineer. However, this event seems to loop, and in the next iteration, he finds his parents dead, with 2 more severed fingers left behind. Joseph soon witnesses his partner Tony being murdered by the Engineer. Then, returning home, he finds his wife and daughter crumbling into pieces before him. Paul Gregory calls him and leads him to his childhood home, revealing himself as the Engineer, only to then transform into Pinhead. In a surreal sequence, Joseph experiences a flashback of his childhood and is attacked by the victims of the Engineer. Fighting his way through, he enters a dark room and finds the child whose fingers were severed, only to realize the child is himself. The Engineer removes his mask to reveal that he, too, is Joseph. Pinhead explains that Joseph has been in hell since solving the puzzle box, trapped in a cycle of punishment for his sins. The child represents his soul, and the Engineer represents his corrupted flesh. With 1 finger left to sever, Pinhead tears Joseph apart. Joseph then wakes up in the motel room, believing it was all a dream, until Daphne calls him, and the events begin repeating. Realizing he is doomed to relive his torment forever, he shoots himself, only to awaken back at the beginning once again, trapped in eternal damnation. The chains have come, and the suffering is eternal. From the attic of forbidden lust to the depths of hell itself, the Hellraiser saga continues to haunt horror fans worldwide. But remember, Pinhead and his Cenobites are never truly gone. If you dare, like, subscribe, and drop a comment on your favorite Hellraiser moment. And whatever you do, don't open the box. Until next time, we have such sights to show you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Stay tuned for more thrilling narratives and insights.
What are you?